It's the 4th annual Greatness in Leadership event taking place here at the Enmax Center today. These people are going to hear from amazing motivational speakers like Olympian Katharina LeMay-Doan, also Steve Carlisle. He is the president of GM Canada, and also an amazing man, Dr. Robert Ballard, who discovered the Titanic. What a story he's got. And we'll kind of wander around and talk to a number of the people that are taking part here at Greatness in Leadership today.
Greatness in Leadership is an annual event in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, featuring world-class speakers with inspirational messages.
So we've got a bunch of girls from Chinook High School. Yay, Chinook.
Yeah.
Tell us about, being here, the opportunity, especially when you think about someone who discovered the Titanic. Tell me first who you are and about the experience so far.
I'm Charlize Barron from Chinook High School, and it's really an honor to be here because a lot of people paid a lot of money to get a chance to come here, and we got to be here for free.
What?
Yeah. I know, you got to talk to our people to let you know how to get in here.
That's great.
And so it's really an opportunity to listen to people who have really good stories. Like we just listened to Darcy Lynn, and she said a lot of really cool things and a lot of focusing more on some more positive things instead of how many things can drag us down a lot of the time. And I think it's really important to think a little bit more about, hey, you are good enough and you can keep doing things and telling people that they're good enough and bring people up around in your life.
So what do you want to be when you grow up?
That's always the $100 million question. I don't know yet, and that's okay.
That's all right.
So I'm looking at somewhere math, sciencey, possibly architecture, engineering, or psychology. So who knows?
Tell us who you are.
My name's Tegan, and I'm also from Chinook, and this is my 3rd year attending the conference.
Yeah.
And every year there's a great takeaway. You get really inspired to bring what we learned to the school. And we just heard Darcy Lynn talk, and she was really good. Got lots of notes.
Oh, did you?
Yes. And
Is this a test that when you get back to school?
probably, yes. I'm just kidding. Yeah, and
So tell me, do you guys sit around and talk about your futures and where you are right now in your lives, and are you afraid, or are you excited, or all of the above?
we usually sit around and talk about how nervous we are because none of us know what we're going to do yet. And it's approaching, but no, yeah, I think we're all pretty excited for university because that's probably when we'll start going into our streams. Yeah.
All right, tell us who you are.
I'm also Tegan. Yeah. I'm from Chinook. This is my first year at the conference. I feel like it's a good opportunity to learn, especially through athletics and stuff. I feel like I'm a leader on some of my teams, so I feel like this is a great way to build my skills on that.
Of course, Katharina LeMay-Doan is going to be here. That's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Is there any one person you're actually looking forward to? Is she one of them?
Yeah, him and then Captain Ballard as well. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like it's a really cool experience.
Did you see the Titanic, the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
And?
It's good. I like it. It's good.
Tell us who you are.
I'm Logan Thomas, and I'm also from Chinook High School.
So, what are you taking from all of this right now so far? I mean, you're just starting, but...
Yeah, this is actually my first year here, and I'm very excited to hear all the speakers. There's a lot of really interesting points that I've heard so far, and I'm really excited to take it back to our school.
And once again, I always like to ask, what about the future? What do you think about the future? Where you're headed? How the world is? Is the world a good place?
I think there's a lot of things that we can improve on in the world, and taking points from this conference, we need great leaders to improve our world, and there's a lot of things that we can take from today.
Are you going to be a leader?
I hope so.
For 25 years, Darcy has been sharing her focus on the 90% message. She helps to transform cultures, employee engagement, and in turn, morale and profitability by shifting how people view their lives. Darcy's message about focusing on the 90% is clear, insightful, and most of all, important.
Motivational speaker Darcy Lang headlines here today at Greatness in Leadership. Darcy, you talk about the 90%.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
It's my belief that we hold this big magnifying glass out in front of us in our life. And the 90% is that also my belief that we have a choice what we focus it on, what I call the 90%, the positive aspects of our life, or the not so positive 10%. So that's what the 90% is, this idea that we have choice.
Right. And that can be applied in every avenue of life, can it? I mean, we look at the students that are up there, we look at the businessmen who are big executives, we look at the casual person who's here to hear some inspiration. So it can be applied all the way through.
Agreed, Mark. And not only does it apply to everyone here, this message applies to all areas of your life, because sometimes we hear a motivational speaker and they only talk about how to be great at work, but I talk about how to be great in your job, how to be great with those around us, and more importantly, Mark, I think is how to be great at home.
Right.
Because it's easy to be great in the world, but do we go home with the same integrity?
Sure.
That's important to me.
So what do you do? How do you make it great at home? How do you give your 90% there?
Well, the same way I give it out into the world is that I see my life through my 90% lens. I choose to tell the story of my job from that place. I choose to see you through that lens, Mark. So then I go home and I do the same thing.
Right.
So it's literally one idea, right? That we have a choice on how we view all areas of our life. So I often say I'm the same woman on stage as I am off, because I give my family the same that I would give you today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. You know what, I just have to say, I'm sure it's a tool that you use because you've repeated my name over and over. I think that's something that you do that makes me feel that you actually know who I am. You know, you call me Mark all the time. Is that one of your tools?
Well, you know what, Mark? I am a people person, right? I love people. I have the perfect job for me. And I always say, if people need to connect with other people, and don't pick a job that requires you to like them if you don't like them. And so it's not really a tool. It's more of a reaffirm that I am a people person. I'm grateful for you to do this for me. So I think that's why I do it.
Oh, thank you. Darcy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chris, for working the camera.
All right, good.
Continue for 4 more years. And perhaps the word innovation. It's all around us. Again, whether it's the idea is
Tara Plato is CEO of the Lethbridge Public Library, and you are a major sponsor here of Greatness in Leadership, in particular for Captain Ballard. That's pretty exciting. Tell us about why it's important to be involved here.
Well, the library's been involved for a number of years because we believe in connecting people to ideas in Lethbridge. And we know that the speakers that Ryan and his team are able to bring in are speakers that we might not otherwise get to see, and that people who live and work here might not otherwise have access to. So we think it's really important to be able to help bring those speakers here. We help get people to the event by providing tickets through our Lethbridge Presents program.
That's nice.
And we're just very excited to hear the stories that our speakers have to tell today on stage.
And how inspiring is it for you personally to have a listen to some of these people? I mean, this isn't your first year, but you know, in the past, you've taken things away, the messages.
Yeah, so myself, we bring our management team to this event so that we can all learn some tools and tricks for being better leaders. And whether it's at work or whether it's, again, at home or in our community, the library really aspires to be a leader in the community. So we think it's important that we have this opportunity to listen to all of these great speakers and all of the ideas and tools that they have for us.
Very good. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Steve Carlisle is the president of GM Canada. Welcome to Lethbridge, Steve, and welcome to Greatness in Leadership.
Thanks. It's great to be here. It's been a terrific event. Yeah.
And I know Davis, Mike Davis from Davis GM is a big sponsor of this event, has been for a number of years, so that's kind of a big deal. He's really been on board for this.
Yeah, he sure has. And as I come to learn about the event, I've been really impressed about its ambitious, but I think very powerful and important. Sure. And the audience that's here, you know, a good mix of experienced business people, but then also students in terms of, you know, planting some thoughts and inspiring some and creating aspirations. I think that's really cool.
And certainly that is one of the big things about this event, is getting the university kids and the high school kids who are really embracing this and saying, hey, I can be somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly right. And I think in today's world, like, and where we sit in the automotive industry and in the sector, it's becoming clear the type of skill sets and motivations that are required. And so to have an opportunity to express that and paint a different picture of an industry is kind of a lot newer and a lot more relevant than some people might appreciate. It's a terrific opportunity.
So it's called Greatness in Leadership. So who were some of your inspirations, and then how do you turn that around to inspire? As you know, you've got the students here, you also have business people here.
Well, I'm going to stay away from politics for sure. Yeah. But there are people within the company, names you might not know, but there was a guy called Bob Lutz, who was a storied individual in the automotive industry. He was their vice chairman of product development back in the 2000s, and Bob was brought back out of retirement basically to restructure, reorient our product development, and I had the opportunity to work very closely with Bob for a number of years, and I learned a lot from him just about purpose and conviction to drive through purpose and storytelling and the like of that. So there's a whole range I referred to in my remarks of remarkable people through the years that I had the opportunity to work with. But generally, it's a leader with a vision and purpose and the ability to compel action. Those are the sorts that I really appreciate.
And then you, in turn, pass it on to the people that you've worked as the leader.
I find I must be getting old, but I get asked those questions more and more these days. So, what's your perspective on this, that, or the next thing? So, yeah.
You alluded to a number of the, GM is such an innovative company, and of course you're talking about the automated cars. That's a big thing that's coming up, and you have to be ahead of the curve. You have to talk about that. You have to talk about, alternate fuel sources, and you're dealing with that. So maybe if you can just address that one more time. Where is GM at right now? What we're going. And another thing that I want to address too is something that I heard recently from some colleagues of mine, that city planners in big cities are saying, you know what, we don't necessarily need to plan for parking spaces anymore because we're not going to have as many cars, personal cars, plus people who have 14, 13-year-old kids. They're saying, you know what, I don't really want to drive anymore. We got Uber, we got the Lyft, we've got other ways of getting around. So is that going to diminish, the number of cars that you sell?
We actually don't think so. When we look at and now we're getting some experience with car sharing. We're in 17 cities across the United States, and now in Toronto and Kitchener, Waterloo. So on sharing, I guess there's 2 points to that. One is there's kind of a life stage and an environment sort of thing. So if you're a young person living in a large urban metro and you don't want the hassle of owning a car, whether it's the cost of parking or insurance or the car itself, because you can walk a lot of places, so there's public transit. So there's a use case. But we're also seeing that eventually those people will, want to get married, want to have kids, need more room, move to someplace more affordable with more space. Then they'll need some other form of transportation because we don't have public transit built out everywhere. The early read on autonomous is, we see it in fleet, robo-taxi fleets. So we see all those things, and consumers are telling us through research that they see those as in addition to. They still want the freedom of mobility that their personal vehicle gives them, but they also appreciate the idea of using car sharing or ride sharing, or whether it's autonomous robo-taxis or what have you, when that's the best solution for what they're doing. So we don't necessarily, and then we see population continues to grow, so the mobility requirement is going to continue to grow. Like the population in the United States will grow by 2050 from where it is today by about another 20%. So we'll be from 330 million to pushing 500 million. In Canada, we're about 34 million. We'll be pushing 50, if not beyond that. And humans by nature need to be mobile, and we need to cover vast distances. So So for us, it's about how do we provide the best solutions for what you're trying to do at that moment in time.
How are you at hiring women in executive roles?
Not as good as we want to be. I'll start with that, but improving very quickly. Yeah, we had an interesting meeting because it's when you look for something you see it, right? And so we're very conscious of that these days, especially given the hiring that we're doing. So there's a marketing meeting that we have once a month or so, and I generally sit at the end of the horseshoe. And I looked in the room, and this side was women, and this side was all men, and 20 and 30 somethings. And so I looked at the room, and I said, doing a really good job with representation here, but maybe next time you could mix it up a little, because that's kind of the point of it. So all that's to say is that we're seeing it in terms of the pipeline at the senior levels. We have worked. We're very proud of our CEO, Mary Barra, as a positive role model for that in the auto sector. She's the first woman that's held a position like that in a large auto company, and that's really changed the conversation. Our board of directors is much better represented today, and we're committed to continue to improve that throughout the company, whether we're hiring experienced talent or we're growing the pipeline. Yeah, we need to have an employee base that reflects the consumer base we're selling into. Yeah.
Now, this is an important question, and remind you are under oath. What was the first car you bought?
I can't remember.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Final question: are the Leafs going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
Yeah, I think we got a shot at it. I've been a lifelong, long-suffering Leafs fan, and it's been since '67. And I think we got a really good team on the ice, and a good coach and a good system. And recently, they've been winning with a couple guys on the bench. So.
And a coach that coached in Lethbridge, won a Canadian championship in university.
He's Babs is awesome. We're really happy to have him in Toronto. Where he belongs.
Yes. Steve, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Trevor Lewington is the CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge and wearing a second hat as MC here at Greatness and Leadership, third year in a row.
It is.
You bring the fire to this place with your different outfits.
Well, it's always tough to sit through an event like this for a full day, so we try and add a little of energy and keep people pumped up and excited about the day.
So this is a pretty big deal in Lethbridge. Talk to that.
Yeah, it's not often that you get 2,000 community and business leaders together in one space. You get 500 plus high school students, almost 100 university and college students. That's a really unique crowd to have together and interacting. Last year we saw some of our table ambassadors from the university and college get jobs with the companies that they were sitting with. That's exciting. You have local business people, leaders that are here, rubbing shoulders literally with the business next door, and perhaps you never know what partnerships and what other interesting collisions happen in that discussion all day long.
Well, and it's a big deal. I mean, right up there, see Cavendish Farms, big new addition to Lethbridge, economic development as well, and GM. It's a big sponsor here, so that's all part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is to raise the profile of Lethbridge. We're capable of hosting a world-class event like this here in Lethbridge, but it also brings the big companies like a General Motors, like a Cavendish Farms, and we're of course wanting to profile the opportunities that exist in this city.
What's it like for you? I mean, we think about last year, Mark Messier, Martin Luther King Jr. the third. The year before that was somebody else. Oh, it was the astronauts.
Buzz Aldrin and Chris Hadfield, yeah.
So what's that experience like for you on a personal level to kind of rub shoulders with people like that?
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, all of the speakers are fantastic backstage, of course, sharing their war stories and making sure we're all microphoned up. It's really great to meet some of those people and hear their experiences. Just today, learning a little bit about GM's business strategy from Steve Carlisle as an example. But it's not very often you get to rub shoulders with astronauts, people that have walked on the moon. So for me, it's personally very exciting and rewarding just to have those conversations and meet people I'm might not otherwise be able to do so.
And then today talk to, rub shoulders with a guy who found the Titanic. That's pretty good.
That's exactly it. Dr. Ballard's got all kinds of stories, and he's a risk taker and adventurer, and he is really trying to do some great things with his Ocean Trust, and I'm looking forward to hearing him this afternoon.
So what do you take from this, aside from, you are the MC, but you must take a lot into it yourself?
Yeah, what I take away is some of the leadership lessons. I'm always interested to learn what I can do differently with my own organization in our community. But then also, again, some of those discussions that happen here on the floor between community and business groups. It's, this is where we come to solve problems, and hopefully we've not been just talking about innovation, but people are using those lessons to have real conversations and fix problems in our community here and now.
Looking forward to the next suit.
I'll do what I can. All right, thanks, guys.
Featured speaker to the Greatness in Leadership event, it is Dr. Robert Ballard. So honored to get to talk to you today. Of course, famous for discovering the Titanic, which we'll get into. First off, what about discovering Lethbridge? How exciting has that been for you?
Well, my family homesteaded south of here and just over the border in Montana, and I had a place for 20 years in Whitefish, so I've seen a lot of Canadians come down there to ski on big mountains, so no, I'm familiar with this neck of the woods.
So I understand you were born in the Midwest, and yet you still became an oceanographer. Let's get to that. How did that happen?
Well, all oceanographers come from Wichita, Kansas. But my family, I was born in Wichita, but I wasn't there very long because I was born 6 months after Pearl Harbor. So my dad packed up the family, and I ended up in the Mojave Desert where they were test pilot. He was a test pilot with Chuck Yeager.
Wow.
And then went on to get into the aerospace industry and actually was chief engineer of the Minuteman Missile Program. Wow. So I grew up in an aerospace environment, but he made a big mistake. We lived right near the ocean in San Diego, and that's where it all began for me.
And you disappointed him to no end when you said, I'm going to go under the water.
Well, actually not. He asked me when I was a kid, what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I wanted to be Captain Nemo because I just read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And you should never sit on a kid's passion.
Sure.
Even if it's ridiculous. And so he worked on it. He said, well, tell me a little bit more about Captain. I said, he had a submarine. Woo. And so he took me down to the sub base in San Diego, and it was right after the war, and I fell in love with submarines, and then actually went in the Navy, spent 30 years in submarines, deep diving submarines. But then he said, well, it was more than just a submarine. I said, yeah, it had a window. And he said, well, that sounds like an oceanographer. And right down the street, it was Scripps, the biggest oceanographic institution in the world. So I just lived my passion and became Captain Nemo.
Well, and that's kind of one of your big things, too, as far as leadership goes, having a passion. You had that, and that's important. And we're all talking about greatness in leadership. That's part of it.
Well, if you don't have passion, you won't pass through failure. I mean, failure is not something you avoid. Failure is the biggest and best teacher you're ever going to meet, but can you survive it? Right. And what causes you to survive when you get knocked down is your passion, and it gets you back up. So if you don't have a passion, you better find one, and that's what you better follow. Yeah.
Let's take us through that first time that you went under the ocean, your first trip. What was going through your mind, and what kind of an experience was that?
Well, it was really unique. I went in a submarine called the Ben Franklin. And it was built by a famous atmospheric physicist by the name of Auguste Piccard, who had gone up in balloons. And then he designed a balloon in reverse called a bathyscaphe. And then they went on to build these modern ones. But he built a submarine that could stay underwater for a month.
Wow.
And that was the Nautilus in my mind. And so when I first went down, I went down in this submarine, the Ben Franklin, and we stayed under. On that trip, we were only under for 5 days. I don't think I slept a minute. It had 32 portholes, and I just felt like I was in the Nautilus. So it was a dream come true for me.
Well, we have to get to the Titanic because we just, that's we got to. But I mean, and the story goes that you only found the Titanic after agreeing to find 2 other ships, right? So explain the story.
Well, I wanted to move. I had spent first 20 years of my life in submarines, and in deep diving submarines, you spend most of your time going up and down. The Titanic is 12,000 feet down, and in a deep diving submarine takes you 2.5 hours each way. So you're not spending much time at the office. You're spending most of the time on the freeway. So I decided, we got to get away from this, and we got to design robots that can carry our spirit. But if you can get robots to do it, then they can stay down indefinitely. So I was after bottom time. And so I designed this with a group of my team at MIT, and I couldn't get anyone to fund it. So I went back to the Navy, and I showed them what I wanted to do, and they said, well, that's like drones, underwater drones. I said, yes. He said, well, that's the kind of technology we want to get into. So we'll fund it, but you got to do something for us. No good deed goes unpunished. And they said, we lost 2 submarines during the Cold War, the Thresher and the Scorpion. And in the case of the Scorpion, it had nuclear weapons, and we don't like leaving those around. So we need you to go out and find those nuclear weapons. We want you to know what the reactors are doing to the environment, but we can't let the Soviets know you're doing it, so we need a cover story. And so I said, well, how about we tell the world I'm going after the Titanic? Because it turned out the Thresher was to the west, Scorpion was to the east.
Of the Titanic.
And they said that was a great cover. They were not happy when I found the Titanic. They thought this is going to blow your cover, but it never happened. The public was so fixated on my discovery of the Titanic, they didn't realize what else I was doing. In fact, if you're in Washington, D.C., May 30th to the rest of the year, we're telling the true story at National Geographic headquarters called Titanic, The Untold Story, and we're going to finally fess up to what we were really up to.
We're hearing it now, right?
You got it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So you found those 2 subs?
We did, and we actually penetrated inside of them because we were looking for the weapons. And I then had a second cover expedition where I was going inside the Titanic.
Yeah.
So it worked.
Yeah.
And I can only tell you without killing you right now because they declassified it.
Yeah,
so.
that's fantastic.
So we had to keep it secret for quite a while.
And we're talking about the 80s, right?
This is in the 80s, 1985, 86, yeah.
All right, let's move to the Titanic. I mean, because that must have been unbelievable to make that discovery. Was it?
Well, it's haunting because the deep sea is such a preserver of history. When I show my images tonight, you're going to see really like you're there. I mean, it's really a ghost town. I found a lot of shipwrecks dating all the way back to 500 BC. And in fact, we just found one from the classical period that had human remains on it.
So when you finally get to the ship itself, I mean, and we've seen the images. I don't know how sick you are of hearing about the Titanic movie, but that is haunting when you first see that image of the stern. What goes through your mind in terms of yay, I found the Titanic, but at the same time, a lot of people died.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened. When we found it at 2 a.m. And someone made the mention when we found it. We were all, celebrating. It was at the last minute. It's like scoring the winning goal at a hockey game in 2 seconds. So we were all excited that we found it. But then someone looked at the clock and said, she sinks in 20 minutes. Oh, wow. And that was just made us feel foolish that we were dancing on someone's grave. And so we stopped what we were doing. We brought the vehicles up off the bottom and we went out and had a memorial service, and the mood shifted. Right. So that's why I was so opposed and remain opposed to taking things from the Titanic.
Right. What was it about the Titanic after you discovered it? What were some of the things that you said, wow, we didn't think this happened?
No, the thing that really got me were the shoes, which you'd say, what? I mean, when you're on the Titanic, everything's big. Everything's Titanic in size. The anchors, there's a wonderful little gift they're giving out tonight. Those anchors everything was monstrous on the Titanic. And so you're down there seeing gigantic things. And then I noticed pairs of shoes, not single shoes, but pairs of shoes everywhere. Pair of baby shoes with a pair of mother shoes.
Still intact.
Laying where the body landed. See, the bodies came raining down long after the Titanic got to the bottom. People were freezing to death and didn't have a life jacket. They then drowned and sank. So all the bodies landed. Well, in the deep sea, creatures are there. They're going to find, it's like a wolf finding a body in the woods. But then they exposed the skeleton, but at 12,000 feet, the water down there is undersaturated with calcium carbonate, which is what your bones are. So it dissolves the bones, but it leaves the shoes behind as the tombstone. So you see them, and they're very spooky. And they're exactly positioned the way they were on the body. and they're still there. Yeah.
Just had some chills went up my back here. Yeah.
It is moving when you see those.
I hope you don't mind me asking, but the movie Titanic.
Loved
your
it.
Thought, did you? Okay.
Loved it.
And did you meet James Cameron?
Jim was one of the first person to come and see me after I found the Titanic.
Oh, I got to make a movie.
He did.
Yeah.
He said, now I can make a movie. And so Jim constantly involved me in the making of his movie, calling me at night.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
And he's a good friend to this day. I was just with him. He called me after he would shoot at night in Ensenada, and I was in New England. My wife was pregnant with our child, my daughter. And he then invited me to come to the premiere in Hollywood, which I thought, well, that's really cool. It was the day my daughter was due.
Oh, no.
And so I said, Jim, I got to be on the 50-yard line for this. I got to catch this one. So he then called back and said, well, why don't we come down when we do a premiere in D.C.? And I went down there and did that one. But Larry King got a hold of the fact that I was coming down. And so he called, says, can you come on the show with Jim and you can come on Larry King? And I said, sure. And then they realized that I hadn't seen the movie. So Jim then got the movie on a jet, and they flew it out to the local cinema the day before for me to see the movie. Wow. So I had my own private showing of it with my wife, and my daughter had been born by then. So
why is it important to continue to search for things in the ocean? How important is the ocean to you?
Well, as you'll hear tonight, it's critical to the survival of our species. We're running out of food. We're running out of farmland. We are not going to be able to feed the world without turning to the sea and moving to farming and herding at sea. And so it's critical.
What are some of your projects, if you can tell me that?
Well, right now, we are working with Canada. We're working off Vancouver, British Columbia with Ocean Network Canada, wiring that plate in case that puppy goes. You're going to have quite a tsunami hitting Vancouver. So we're working with the University of Victoria, Kate Moran, who I've known for years. We'll be out there again. You can watch our work off Canada. Go to nautiluslive.org for the whole month of June and tune in and watch us explore off Canada.
Wow.
Yeah.
So final thoughts about the whole reason you're here, about leadership and what it means to be who you are and to pass on your knowledge.
Well, you can't do what I do without a team, and a team won't follow you unless you're a leader. And I had early training during Vietnam as a combat infantry officer, went into the Navy as a naval intelligence officer conducting top secret missions, and so I learned how to lead very early in life. And so this is all about getting that message across to young people that before you can lead, you better learn how to follow. And so that's just all the part of the process.
Dr. Robert Ballard, it has been an ultimate pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the big things about greatness and leadership is the Student Ambassador Program, and we happen to have one right here.
Yes.
Tell us who you are and what exactly is a Student Ambassador?
My name is Nicholas Jackson. I'm from the Lethbridge College, and Student Ambassador are here for the day to basically be hospitable to our guests and be representatives of the college and the university and the future of Lethbridge, and learn and be inspired today with all that's going on and be able to interact and network and get some great knowledge from people in the industry.
And so this is your second year doing this?
Yes.
Have you got a job yet?
Yes, I do have a job for the summer employment, and last year I was with Co-op Grocers, and I was offered a job, so yeah. So
what does it mean to hear these, speakers that you probably wouldn't hear anywhere else? And this is a, kind of a world-class caliber of people who are giving you inspiration.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's an awesome day to get insight and to be able to network with other people in industry and to be able to talk to them firsthand, to be here on the floor and meet people like yourself. It's a truly wonderful and inspiring experience as a student. It's really nice to get a break from the classroom and just learn hands-on.
Who's the table you're looking after?
I'm looking after the Lethbridge Public Library, and I've learned lots of insight about technology and disruptors in the industry, and how I can be anyone out there who wants to learn more about public library. It's a very good place to be as a student and as anyone in the community.
All right, go look after him.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Connie Podesta changes the way people think about business and life. Her strategies build revenue by building sales and relationships, and she does it all through a rare blend of laugh-out comedy. That has made her one of the most unique and memorable speakers on the stage today, and she's been doing that for over 25 years.
We're so happy to welcome Connie Podesta from Dallas, Texas, and Chicago, right?
Right.
You have a lot of credentials to your name, including human behavior expert,
Yes.
and comedian, and jack of all trades, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of deal with how to deal with idiots.
And that's what you talk about. Everything would be
Yes.
all right if it wasn't for people, right?
Right. I think, my number one topic is life would be easy if it weren't for other people, because isn't that what most of us think? Like, if it weren't for them, I could be fine. Healthcare says if it weren't for the patients, and teachers say if it weren't for the kids, and leaders say if it weren't for the employees or the customers. So, yeah.
So what's going to be your message today with your talk?
Do you know I don't know?
Oh, yeah?
Here's
You're just
why.
gonna wing it?
No, not really. And all the left brain people, bottom line, are freaking out right now. I have 20 hours of material. And I'm very intuitive with my audience. It's why I don't use PowerPoint, because PowerPoint means I would have had to have figured out what I was going to say like weeks ago.
Yeah.
I have an overall thing. I know I'm going to talk about human behavior. I talk a lot about the choices we make and how sometimes we get in our own way. I'm very funny and interactive, and there's going to be people up on stage and having a great time. But I'm really good at reading an audience, and so I kind of like having that spontaneity that if an audience is with me, I just kind of keep going down that path, and if I think they've got it in their brain, then I can change direction. So I like kind of weaving back and forth, and me being in tune to the audience and following their lead rather than them following my lead.
Yeah, that's nice to have that in your arsenal, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, good. So people will get a kick out of you.
I hope so. I get a kick out of me.
Yeah.
You're definitely getting a kick out of me, right?
Tell me, I just got elected to city council, and you want to talk.
I'm so
I know
sorry.
that's what I'm saying.
I do therapy.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, do you
Can we
need
talk
some?
after?
Yes,
Yeah, if
please.
you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, and I also would teach people how to say no. So
Well,
you might need that course too.
Well, we talk about dealing with the public, so give me some insight right now. How do I deal with people who are angry with me?
Well, you don't get angry back because they'll sue you.
Yeah.
And besides that, takes it off in another direction. You don't try to stop them from being angry because that'll make them angrier. The best thing is just to say words like, "So what's your point?"
Okay, good.
You
I
know,
like that.
so I mean, let's try it now. So if I came up to you and said, I am really angry about this, and I think you should do this, and the council doesn't care about people, and I'm tired of living in a community, your answer could be,
So what's your point?
well, I just think you all should do something about it. And so,
What should we do?
yes, there you go. So most people, when they're confronted with anger, they want to say, well, you don't have to be so angry, and there's no need to be angry. And they start defending and apologizing and making excuses. And you can't. Most angry people have a litany of stuff that they're mad about. And so why the words, "so what's your point?" Those are such powerful words because you're trying to narrow them down. Okay? Now, let's say I attack you. Well, you're the problem and you're the reason. Don't ever say, well, I'm sorry you feel that. With the minute you apologize, you've handed your power over. So you instead would say something like, I understand. I can tell that you're angry. But what I need to ask you is, what's your point? What would you like to have done first?
Okay, can I give you a real specific example right now? Okay,
Well, don't mention names because we can.
No, we won't give names.
You'll
No,
be taken off the city council.
we just we just okayed artwork for like $200,000. We just had a terrible winter where people weren't getting their snow removed from their driveways because we just didn't have time and the budget was out. So people are saying, you spent $200,000 on artwork when you could have spent it on our snow removal. And I say, what's your point?
What would you like us to do about that now? The artwork has been purchased. We had a bad winter. Don't say what's your point, because now in that case it's sarcastic, but you can say, what would you like us to do now? Well, I just want you to know, and say, then I do know, and I understand. I understand.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's good.
Right. Most angry people have a valid complaint.
Oh, sure.
Hidden in all the anger. And what's happened is their anger, and they don't realize that their anger is keeping them from getting their answers that they need, because most people, when they're hit with anger, stop really thinking logically in their brain. And so what you're trying to do with angry people, even kids, and this is a great line for parents, the kid is, you don't trust me, you don't like me, you never give me the car. So what's your point? Yeah. Well, I think that you should, what's the first thing that you would like to have happen here? Well, I think that, so what you're trying to get people to do is not patronize them, but you're trying to get them to, instead of listing all the things in the world that are wrong, you're trying to get them to narrow it down so that you can deal with one issue instead of, with the artwork, it's already been purchased, it's not returnable. So rather than talking about something that you can't change, what you would say to them is, it's already been purchased, we can't return it. I understand your feelings, I'm hearing what you're saying. What would you suggest we do at this point?
Good, thank you.
Right, and if they say, well, don't do that again, that could be a legitimate request. You might choose not to do that again, right? Now that you know the reaction.
Sure, good. How did you get into this field? Let's go back. Little Connie coming up somewhere in Chicago saying, I'm going to be one of these.
I learned in school that if I could be funny and make people laugh, and years and years and years ago, I was invited to this popular girls' party, and I was kind of one of the average kids, and I was so taken aback, how did I get invited to this party? And later on, I heard them talking, they didn't see me, and they said, why did you invite Connie? And she said, oh, I'm in some of her classes, and she's so funny, she's going to have us laughing all night. And I knew at that moment that I really hadn't been invited to the party. I'd pretty much been hired for my first comedy gig, right? And I was like, wow. And they did laugh all night. And so we all kind of learn when we're young. Some of us learn to be really intelligent. That's how we'll get attention. Some of us have a talent, and some of us are just really nice people. Somewhere around 12 and 13, we all start exploring what we can do to draw attention to us. Some of us become troublemakers and get attention in a negative way. But I learned really early on that if I could be funny and make people laugh, that I could become more successful, I could be included in different groups, I could, have jobs that I wanted and do well on interviews. So comedy's just been a part of my life.
And have you done a stand-up circuit?
Oh, no. Years and years ago, I did some improvs, maybe 2 or 3, and knew immediately that I did not want to spend my life speaking to drunk people and swearing a lot and talking about embarrassing things. I like the comedy, I won't say my age, but I grew up with comedy where we didn't make fun of other people like they do now, and we didn't swear and holler. It was comedy where people were laughing. It's why I like Seinfeld so much. You're laughing, and when people laugh at me, I think it's the same reason. They're laughing not because I told a joke. They're laughing because they're like, oh my God, I did that. That's just what I said. I do that all the time. It's like she's in my room. So I love corporate comedy, business comedy, because we don't have to do the things that they do in club comedy. Right. We have to be politically correct. We have to be clean in grammar. We can't and I wouldn't want to make fun of anyone else. We have to do what I think is the purest comedy, and that is to make people laugh without ever hurting anyone else or ever being, out of unpolitically correct or ever being profane. And I think that's the truest comedy in the world.
Connie, thank you so much.
Okay.
Any final thoughts about being in Lethbridge and the greatness and leadership?
No. The place is beautiful, and it's a wonderful thing that they're doing. I love the idea of, I taught high school, I taught university. One of the things that attracted me to this was their involvement with the students. Right. And I just think that's a great message to have leadership and talk to students. And I love having students and adults in the audience at the same time. That's a real unique mix for me. So come tomorrow and you'll be surprised, and we'll have a great time. And it's entertaining and motivational and tons of content about ourselves. And people usually leave mine very self-aware of what they do and don't do that could that gets in their own way or keeps them from being more successful. So most people will leave tomorrow with a few ideas on how to perhaps do a few things differently.
Fantastic. And I will take to heart your advice. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Connie.
Bye-bye.
Julie, Lowell, Taylor from Amazing Race Canada. And you guys are here at the Greatness and Leadership, obviously, to be inspired. How has it been so far for you?
We love the message. It resonates with us. So far in the mornings, that greatness. How do you provide greatness to your families, to the people you're with? Yeah. And it's a lot about attitude, and that resonates with us and some of the messages that we speak as well.
And you know what I love is when you go into an event and you've never heard of one of the speakers and you don't know what to expect, and they just blow you away. I was completely engaged the whole time. Darcy Lang had absolutely no visuals, and yet completely engaging the whole time, and I just loved her message, focusing on 90% the positive.
Yeah, and obviously this is something you guys are doing now. You're doing a lot of motivational speaking, so you can learn some stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah. We're watching.
Yeah, we're watching. We want to learn and be the best that we can be at what we do, and watching people who are very honed at their craft is exciting for us too.
Speaking of honed to the craft, Katrina LeMay Donut's coming. What do you think?
So excited to meet Katrina, or at least hear her speak.
Yeah.
We already tried to stalk her out for a selfie, but couldn't find her, so hopefully later.
But Katrina, she's a mentor to Olympians, and to be a Paralympian is one of my dreams. But also somebody who's dedicated her life to skill, to passion, and to help others is just inspiring all of itself.
Good. And the best of luck to the rest of your futures too.
Thank you so much.
To this day in 2018, it's one of the faster starts. And this was 1994. This was a long time ago, and I thought, okay, I'm on. But I started to set up that corner, and I started to enter it. And if you remember, in that video, I was wearing the gray, red, and white suit. My skates slipped out underneath me, and I crashed into the bumpers. I remember everything beforehand, but then I have no recollection of the race. I don't know what's happened. I've analyzed the video. Did my weight get forward? Did I get nervous? Did the ice break?
How exciting. Katrina LeMay Doan, Olympian. So nice to have you here at Greatness and Leadership. And a great story. The wonderful stories that you told. And I love a lot of your inspirational stories, including the Terry Fox story. That's so cool.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here and to be able to share a little bit of my journey.
What's very interesting is Terry Fox's namesake, Uncle Terry, lives in Lethbridge. So it's kind of really cool.
Yeah, that is neat. That's very neat. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, what a journey that you've had. Man, when you sit back and you sit down, you're having a glass of wine and you're thinking back about what you've accomplished over the years, what are some of the big things that come to your mind?
There is a lot. People assume that it's the Olympic races, but, some of the best times were the training camps when we were away, and it's behind the scenes stuff. And I guess at the end of the day, that's what I realize, is that you want to win those medals, but medals, they tarnish. Yeah, and they fade. So, it's those memories you can make.
I love how you put it in perspective, at how the amount of time that you did your races compared to the 23 years of racing is so minuscule, isn't it?
That's right. 2.5 minutes of 23 years. So that's what I want. As I went to 2018, I want athletes to realize that, yes, at that moment, it's life or death, because that's how you feel it. It is at those moments, but that eventually you'll be able to put it into perspective.
And that's again another great story that you brought is, you know, your disaster when you first went, and you know, you lost, you fell, it happens. So what do? You get up and you do it again, and I'm sure that's the message you give to those kids all the time.
Yeah, and you know, people don't know the failures that people have had. They only look at the successes, and so it makes you a real person. And I think that was the warning I got going into the games, is that as a mentor, you know, people, there might be a part of them saying, wow, you have 2 gold and a bronze. I don't know if I can relate. But then they realized that I was a real person. I was just normal. Yeah.
And a couple things I love about some of the stats that you brought out. The fact that, you know, no one had ever won back-to-back gold, defended their title, which you did, over 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't even know those stats, of course, till media make you aware of it. And then you're like, thanks, media. Now I know how tough this might be, or if it's even possible. But, you know, it was about 6 years later when Adam Van Couverden was going to be the first, and then he fell just short and won a silver, that it hit me how difficult it was, because it took another 8 years for the first person to do it in 2010.
5 Olympics you've been to. How are Canadians thought of in all of the 5 Olympics that you've been to? Has there been a change? I mean, especially respect-wise, Canadians must get much more respect because they are winning so much compared to what may have been.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. You know, we are, especially Winter Nation, considered one of the best, and we're always battling for the top. You know, summer that we've made our mark as well, so it's been great, and same with the Paralympics. But it's you know, we've evolved because we are competitive in so many things, not just hockey and, you know, in speed skating. We're now some of the best in all of these other events. So it's great. And, you know, again, we need to keep that going. So I think as we look at potential Olympic bids for future, it's sort of in that cycle where we need to keep that, because with an Olympic cycle comes government funding, and that comes the growth of the grassroots, etc. So we need to keep feeding those developments so that we have the elite.
Yeah. And since there's greatness in leadership, and we had kids here as well, so your form of leadership, how would you describe it?
By being real, by being just who you are, by not being perfect.
Yeah.
Being okay with not being perfect, which is a very, very hard thing.
I do that really well.
But you try to be perfect, and that's just my nature. You're always trying to be better and better, and you're chasing this perfect. And to realize you aren't there, I think that's how I lead, is just by showing everybody that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to mess up.
Katrina, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on Lethbridge. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Greatness in Leadership 2018 here at the Enmax Center, featuring Darcy Lang, Connie Podesta, Steve Carlisle, Katrina LeMay-Doan, and of course, the unbelievable Dr. Robert Ballard, the discoverer of Titanic. We'll see you again in 2019.